I have an awful habit of not finishing series. Like, awful. And I want to change that. And I think the only way that is going to change is if I read a series non-stop, back to back. I can't count how many series I've read the first book of, not continued, and by the time I get around to continuing, I have to reread the first book, and then I read the second book, and then I don't read the third, and so on and so forth. But today, that's all gonna change. I am going to start by reading the Drowning Empire series, or Bone Shard series, whatever you want to call it. I have already read this first book, The Bone Shard Daughter. Read it ages ago, forgotten what's happened. I loved it. I think I gave this 4.5 stars when I read it, and I'm finally getting around to reading the rest of the series. So it's only a trilogy, so we've got The Bone Shard Daughter, then The Bone Shard Emperor, and The Bone Shard War. So they're decent sizes. I think this one's the longest, 600 pages, but I'm going to be reading this trilogy back to back, and I'll be giving you my overall impression of this series. It will be completely spoiler free, so don't worry if you haven't read this series before. But I thought it'd be fun just to document the whole process of reading this series. So I will be rereading the first book, which looked a lot older than the other ones. I don't know if you can tell how yellow it is in comparison. This one is $8.99, and then this one is $9.99. Books are becoming $10.99. Has anyone else seen that? Ridiculous. I don't really remember too much about this series. So it's about bone shard magic. It follows a realm sort of loosely based on like ancient China, where the emperor runs the kingdom through bone shard magic. He collects bone shards, I believe from behind the ear of all the people in the empire, and creates animal constructs from these bones to run the kingdom. The back says, but now his rule is failing and revolution is sweeping across the empire's many islands. When the emperor refuses to recognize his daughter as an heir to the throne, she vows to prove her worth by mastering the forbidden art of bone shard magic. So it starts off by following Lin, who is the emperor's daughter, and she's forgotten a lot of her life. She can only remember from 5 years ago up until now. The rest of her past is just a mystery. So she's forgotten a lot of things. So the emperor doesn't want Lin to take over the bone shard magic until she's recovered her memories. It's also multiple POV. I've just read, I literally like 2 chapters in, but I've just read another point of view called Jovan. I know I love this one, so this one's going to be... I know this one's going to be a hit, but I'll come back and update a bit more on what this story is about once I got more into it, and I actually remember what's going on. As the series goes on, reading the next 2, obviously I'm going to be a lot more vague with what I talk about, but I'll still give my overall impressions, things I like, things that don't work. So let's get into it. Okay, you've got a great view of my shoe rack. It has been such a nice day today. It has felt like summer has arrived, and I love it. And I'm having a great time reading this, as I knew I would. It basically follows 4/5 point of views, all set on a different island throughout the empire. The emperor lives on Imperial, which is where he uses the bone shards to keep the empire running. The kingdom was originally taken over from people called the Alanga. I think that's how you pronounce it. So the emperor says that you need to keep contributing your bone shards in order to power the constructs that basically are an army against the Alanga if they were to return. Problem is, it's just a rumor that Alanga will return. If your bone shard is used to power a construct, then it sort of depletes your life. So there's an uprising, there's a rebellion against it because people say it's unfair, they think the emperor's being paranoid, and each one of the characters with the different point of views, none of them support the emperor and all go against his regime in different ways. So you've got Lin, who is the emperor's daughter, the one who's forgotten most of her memories. She's determined to learn Bone Shard magic so she can take over from the Emperor when he dies. She's fighting against her foster brother, and she believes that the title is hers and that he doesn't deserve the title, but she needs to regain her memories first. And then you've got Jovis, who is the most common point of view after Lyn, and he's a smuggler. And he wants to find his wife because she went missing. And that's basically the summary of Jovis. So he's just basically a thief, stealing from the Empire in order to try and find his wife. Then you've got Falou and Rhonomi, who live on an island. And Falou is the governor's daughter. They're in a relationship. Don't really know much more than that, apart from Rhonomi is very against the Empire and Falou believes that the regime is in place for a reason. So they're kind of at odds, but they love each other, so they're trying to figure out a way forward. And then the 4th/5th POV is someone called Sand. I've only had one chapter from them so far. Basically, we're on an island, they don't remember anything, and they were picking mangoes. That character is a complete mystery. I guess that's going to play in a bigger part later on, and I think it does. And that's that. So we've basically just been setting up for, I assume, what will be the rebellion that's going to start. I mean, it's called the Drowning Empire. A lot of people think that the Empire is not going to last. So yeah, I thought I'd just give an update before the sun completely set. I'm about 120 pages in, so I've still got a lot more. It's just been setting up what I've just discussed. I'm excited to learn more about the constructs. It is a pretty basic magic system. You take the bone shards, imbue them with a commander, put them in the constructs, which are basically just an amalgamation of animal parts. But Lyn has to relearn how to use it because she doesn't remember anything, so you're sort of learning alongside her. But the writing style is gorgeous, and that's something that I really remembered about the first time I read this, was how well atmosphere is created through the language. Because they're set on islands, there's lots of descriptions of the sea, the sort of smells you get by being by the coast, and the food that they eat. It's really well done without being overwhelming. Sometimes they can go a bit heavy-handed on the descriptions, but Andrea Stewart has done such a good job. As well as that, the point of views, having so many different points of views can feel overwhelming sometimes, but not with this. And if you think that having loads of different points of views is too much, don't let that put you off from this series, because it's not overly complicated and each point of view is so unique that it makes each one really interesting. As someone who doesn't enjoy multiple POV usually, this is a firm exception. So there's lots of things going on, but it's never too much. It is really, really well done. So I'm gonna get back to this. Good afternoon. My name is Russell. I'm about to go donate blood for the first time, which I'm really excited about because I've always wanted to know what my blood type is. It's like the only way you can find out is through pregnancy, which I don't plan on ever doing, or if you're having major surgery, another thing I don't plan on doing. Give blood is my final option. So I'm about to head out. I don't know how long it'd take. I'm thinking maybe 20-30 minutes, but it's a good time to just sit down and read for a bit. So I'm hopefully going to finish my book today and also find out my blood type. So let's get going. It was all back uphill on the way back. So it's all done. I used to be a phlebotomist, so I'm guessing it'll take 1 to 2 days before the blood type gets uploaded onto the app. So hopefully by the time I've finished the series, I will know. The actual process took about an hour, so I got some reading done. Worst bit was the blood prick, the finger prick test, but I'm getting close to the end now. Not much has happened in terms of major events, plot twists. It's still just sort of getting to know the world a bit more. So I think I'm just going to finish the book and then update on the ending, because I feel like nothing's going to happen until right at the end, and I can't remember the ending at all, which is great. It's like I'm reading it for the first time, so. feel like I just need to like collect my thoughts on this. Like, I can see why I docked it half a star when I read it the first time. I'm actually considering giving it 4 stars, mainly because I feel like the ending was there's so much happened. I can tell Andrea Stewart had like grand ideas, but all of it just kind of felt rushed. I feel like the whole plot of the ending could have been spread out over 2 or 3 books and just fully expanded, mainly on Lynn's journey. Lynn's point of views were definitely the most interesting for me. Jovis's chapters kind of merged in with Ranami's chapters, I think that's her name. So it was mainly Lynn and Jovis / Romani. I thought I had Sans chapters figured out. I didn't. It was just like a roller coaster. That ending, those last 100 pages were just crazy. And I thought the second book would sort of be more of a continuation of this, but I feel like it's going to be a completely different book with the way this ended. There are some things I wish we got more of, mainly to do with the magic system, and I wish Lynn would have spent more time figuring out the politics and how things are run. Maybe it's because I've read this coming off the back of The Will of the Many, or The Strength of the Few, and with that being so politically heavy, this one felt more fast-paced in comparison. Like, the decisions that Lynn makes were just especially along with the revelations that she has. I feel like it would have taken her more time to really discover these and process them, rather than just jumping straight into what she jumped into. I definitely still enjoyed it. Maybe not as much as the first time. I just hope that the second book will have elements that still interest me, because I think what interested me the first time was the writing style and the descriptions of the land, as well as the magic system. And then from Jovis's chapters, I really liked his adventures and him being an unknown smuggler, just sort of like being a little thief in his own little world, which I don't think is going to be a big thing in the next book. I feel like book 2 will have more politics and will overall be a lot more heavy-handed with the ideas of war and governance and who should rule, rather than discovering this whole world about bone shard magic. So overall, this one, 4 stars. I look rough, but I think I'm high off glue fumes. So I've been reading the second book, The Bone Shard Emperor, and I've been listening to the audiobook while doing like a book nook sort of thing, which I won't show you because I looked at the footage and the faces I pull when I'm concentrating are an abomination. That's not seeing the light of day. Everything is so small and detailed that I've been holding it really close to my face and breathing in all the glue. So I think I'm delirious. However, this is actually going better now. This book, to begin with, wasn't going very well as I thought it would be. It's very political. It's a lot about establishing rules, and I feel like everyone is vying for power and establishing their dominance within the empire. To be honest, I'm not sure where it's heading, and it wasn't until they started discussing more about the Ilanga, the rival people, that it's become more interesting. They still don't know much about the Ilanga people, but part of this book is about discovering who they were, how the current empire overthrew them, and why the Sukais, the people in power, want to keep the Ilanga hidden. Lynn doesn't know any of this because her father hasn't told her anything. The Ilanga is still like a mystery, but both Lynn and Jovis in this one are figuring out a bit more about who they were and where they came from, which is the most interesting bit about this. The politics I couldn't care less for. I feel like Ranami and Falu's chapters are the least interesting for me, just because they're focused more on the politics. So there's lots of discussions about who they can trust, who's vying against them in the empire, who's gonna join them. The rebellion has kind of grown stronger along with the other islands, so it's not just the people who are rebelling, but it's also the governors in charge who don't agree with the empire's regime. I feel like these books try and do quite a lot with not very much time. I'm constantly comparing it to The Will of the Many because I feel like both are very politically heavy books while trying to establish a magic system. Something The Will of the Many is quite slow paced, whereas this one I feel like something's always happening, and so you don't get to delve into quite so deep detail of how things have occurred. Then again, the whole world and the world structure isn't so complex as The Will of the Many. I mean, if you haven't read The Will of the Many, this will mean nothing to you, but there's still so much things that haven't been explored and so many loose ends that I feel like we're only going to get into the final book with, which is fine, but I'm worried that this is middle book syndrome, where it's kind of setting up for the final book where everything kind of happens. But it is getting better. I'm about halfway through. I can't see how it's going to end at the moment. Usually you can tell what the final book is going to revolve around. I mean, it's called the Bone Shard War, so... But at the same time, you don't know quite how it's going to get there or how it's going to play out. But there's been a few revelations that have just occurred that kind of left me like, ooh! So things are getting a bit more exciting for me, but I'm really intrigued how the end is going to play out and how it's going to set up for the final book. So I'm in bed now. I've finished book 2 finally. I was having my doubts about this in the middle, wondering if it would have middle book syndrome, but I ended up really enjoying it by the end. Even the political aspect, which I was a bit unsure about, I ended up really liking the discussions about how if people should support the Sukai's rule despite how they've mistreated people in the past, whether they should support them just for the greater good, because supporting them means more support against the threats against the Empire. At the same time, will that support cause more suffering for the people? It really showed how there's no clear good versus evil, just decisions from each party that has consequences, both good and bad. The whole thing really continued my interest. Like, lots happened, and lots of things that I wanted expanded from book 1 were expanded in this one. Lots of discoveries being made, secrets that people had that didn't actually last very long. There wasn't much build up in that sense, but I love the continued discoveries and development of each plot line. Jovis and Lynn finally met up, which was nice because it showed how Lynn was perceived by others, because up until that point we'd only got Lynn's point of view, and so seeing her from someone else's point of view showed how strong and capable she actually is, especially compared to how she came across in book 1. I think she came a long way in this book. So plot development was good, characters good. Mephi still continues to be the best character. He's kind of like this cat otter hybrid with the personality of a golden retriever. Like, Jovis would die for Mephi, I would die for Mephi. I want my own Mephi in my life. So yeah, overall it was a solid read. It's not perfect by any means. Like, I would have liked more attention with the amount of secrets that each character had and the amount of point of views there were. There was more than enough opportunity to be able to build that tension from knowing each person's secrets. But this book still surprised me with how engaging it was, considering most books do fall into that middle book syndrome where they're a bit boring. But yeah, I give this one 4 stars. I'm not sure whether it's better than the first one. I still loved the storyline of the first one, but this one is a good contender, and it was the first time reading this, so lots of new information that I enjoyed. But I am putting off reading the third one for no apparent reason. I mean, this is why I'm doing the series, and why do I have a horn? I always put off continuing a series, and it's got to stop. And we'll see what crazy developments happen in the third and final book. I've just been back to my parents' house and I picked up some of my books. I live in a really small flat, so when I moved I didn't take all my books with me. So it feels like I'm doing an unboxing, but it's my own books, but I haven't seen them in a while. So yeah, I've got some series that I'd like to get around to. These are all unread. So the first one isn't mine. This was my mum's. I bought it for her for Christmas so that when she read it I could then read it. So yeah, Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I've only read one other book by her, Malibu Rising. I thought it was okay, but this story intrigues me a lot more than Malibu Rising does. And I love the cover, it's very pretty. Oh, what else? I also got, oh, look at yellow. Can you see? Not with this lighting. This is a brand new book. I've had this book, I don't even want to know how long. 8 years, maybe? 10 years? But I watched the Amazon TV show of My Lady Jane. Oh, I started reading it. Okay, I loved the TV show, so I actually finally want to read the book, even though I've had this for way longer. This one is about Lady Jane Grey if she wasn't killed after 9 days of becoming queen, and her new husband turns into a horse at night. Can't wait to read it. There's quite a few books that I've read. They're like the first in a series. God. And my new thing is that I'm gonna finish all the series I've started. No more reading the first book and leaving the series for years. Turning a new leaf. So one of them I loved this book. And I got the second one straight away and I haven't read it. So I've got the second one somewhere. Yeah, The Surviving Sky. It says one to reread before I read the sequel. Ooh. Illuminae. It's a throwback. Read this 10 years ago maybe. When did this come out? 2015. I read 1988. I thought that's not right. 2015. Okay. So yeah, probably about 10 years ago because I read this not long after it came out. I don't actually own the sequels of this, but I will get them. Hopefully the editions still match. I don't know whether they will after 10 years, but we'll see. I got a duology. I got a couple of duologies actually. Where's the other one? Again! The colour difference. Love this one. This is only a duology, and yet I still haven't got around to reading the second one. This is Reboot by Amy Tintera. I read another book by her. Listen for the Lie, maybe? This is a dystopian, if you know me. Fucking love a dystopian. 5 years ago, Ren Connolly died. After 178 minutes, she came back as a reboot. Stronger, faster, able to heal, but also less emotional. The longer reboots are under, the less human they are when they return, making Ren 178 the deadliest reboot in the Republic of Texas. And then she meets Callum. When Callum falls short of reboot standards, Ren is told to eliminate him, but the perfect soldier is done taking orders. Reminds me very much of what's it called? Still Humans? Warm Bodies. Warm Bodies? Zombie falls in love with human. Female. Is that the one? Yeah, I've read this twice because I loved it with the meanings to read this one, and I haven't. Lies of Locke Lamora. I haven't read this one, but I own, surprisingly, the third one. This is a UK edition. Oh my god. Dance of Thieves. This is also a duology. I don't own the second one. I haven't read this one. This is something else I want to get to. I've had really good things, so I brought this one with me. 4 more. I have The Black Tongue Thief by Christopher Buehlman, another one I haven't read. Riders by Veronica Rossi. Haven't read that one. Oh, and the other duology that I want to read, just binge read, is the Daughter of the Moon Goddess duology. Read this one. Haven't yet read its sequel. So again, I might do another video like this where I just read these two all in one go. And again, I loved this book. I think I gave it 5 stars. But it's time to read the second. And that was everything in my box. And in terms of what I have been reading, I have made a bit of progress with The Bone Shard War. It's taken me a little bit of time to actually make progress with this. Not for any other reason, the fact that I'm really bad at reading sequels. I'm about there, so about 40% I'd say. This one feels a lot more epic in terms, I think the writing has significantly improved. Like when tension is created, it's maintained. There feels like there's a lot more at stake with this one. Part of me feels that this whole series could have wrapped up in the second book. If some of the loose ends were tied up, I think it would have worked really well as a duology. This kind of feels like an addition to the series, and I kind of think that there's 2 reasons for this. The first one being that this is set 2 years after the previous book. Did I say what the gap was between book 1 and book 2? I think it was a few months maybe. And the other reason is that whole new plot lines have been introduced that weren't really much of a thing in the first 2 books. So that's why I say it's an addition, because the main thing driving the story is something that was just suddenly introduced. Like there's this whole bit about, no spoilers, but there's a whole bit about swords, which kind of gives me Prince Caspian Narnian vibes. Jovis's storyline is completely different. Kind of took me by surprise when we first got his point of view in this one. But at the same time, I have no idea how this is going to end, which is actually really good. Both sides are fighting for an outcome that isn't perfect. So there's a part of me that understands where the enemy is coming from. And I think that's what makes a good villain, is actually understanding their motives behind their actions rather than being inherently evil. The people who are against Lynn, who are against Jovis who are against Falu and Army, part of you sort of agrees and thinks, okay, yeah, I do see why they want that, but maybe they're not going about it the right way. And then all the other characters, the characters we follow, I see where they're coming from, but there's going to be negative consequences from this. So I'm unsure. I'm still enjoying it. It's very fast paced, lots of things happening. Most things were kind of explained within the end of book 2, despite all the plot twists and everything that happened. So there's still a few things that we learned pretty early on that we're still trying to figure out. But yeah, most of this book is just trying to find a resolution and trying to get the end, and I'm sure there'll be a war at some point. I mean, they're pretty much warring already. There's so much fighting going on. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it ends, what the actual outcome will be, because whatever it is, it's not going to be wrapped up in a bow and neatly handed to the characters. So we shall see. And I'm looking at my like book nook thing. So cute. I'm not ready to die of the glue, like inhaling the glue. Like, look at this. So we've got samgyeopsal there. I don't actually know what that is. Some kimchi there. Some rice. I have hand tremors. Do you know how difficult it is to like put stuff? I don't want to know how long this took me. But I've also run out of Spotify listening hours, so I guess I won't be able to finish it anyway. I need to read physically, so we'll see how much further I get in the book tonight. I finished! It only took me a week to finish. I kept putting it off. Not the point. I want to preface this by saying I'm giving this 4 stars because I'm probably going to say lots of negative things. I just want to be clear that I did enjoy this. From where I left off previously, I think it was definitely starting to drag a little bit in the middle. Just a lot of back and forth that felt very unnecessary, especially now that I've read the ending. I'm like, what was the point, you know? However, I did like the fact that it all came to a natural conclusion. And I know I mentioned that the war felt like it already started, and it kind of already had. There were lots of smaller fights leading to the final battle, so the climax didn't feel overly forced once we got there. So the thing that irked me the most about this was the alliances that were made between the characters. They just felt so fickle. So many minds were easily swayed, and I feel like it was simply just to push the desired storyline along. I don't know, if it was me, I wouldn't be jumping ships every 5 chapters just because someone gave me a good speech. You know, like someone would stand up and be like, you should support me because of this, and everyone would be like, yay! And then they'd change their minds again 5 seconds later. I did love the ending and how it wrapped up. I was worried there for a second how it was gonna end, but I didn't need to be. Like, it wasn't all wrapped up perfectly in la-di-la land, but it was the natural outcome of a messy war and a conflicted empire. I still really wish it hadn't been set 2 years after the previous book, just because there were so many moments where it was mentioned how these past 2 years had affected the characters and how it showed on their faces. Like, you could see the worry and the stress in their faces of how it affected them. But us as readers weren't shown these moments. We just had to take it at face value. And it's all about the being told, not shown. I don't know, I get why this was made a separate book. Now I've got to the ending, but still that first part just felt very unnecessary. I don't know if I want to go that far because it's set up for the final thing. Just maybe it was longer than it should have been. This was like 600 pages. I don't know. It's getting very dark in here. However, despite the meandering first half of this book, the characters themselves are what really boosted the story. Their interpersonal relationships, like Lin and Jovis and their sort of soft yearning for each other, starting to rain. And then you have like Falu and Renami and their more mature relationship with each other. And even Sans relationships, like she always seemed to end up having toxic relationships with people. Hold on, I'm gonna turn on a light, hold on. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so it felt like these relationships were really fleshed out and it made the characters feel more intimate and real. So it has its issues, but don't we all? And it had some good bones. Good bones. Oh, speaking of which, the magic system just went completely out the window. So it kind of became a subplot. Even the stuff about Alanga and the bone shard magic, it all kind of became a subplot towards the end. It was more focused on the politics and who deserves the power, which is a bit of a bummer, but I mean, it wasn't a complex magical system to begin with. So I'm not that fussed personally. The plot twists I definitely should have seen coming, as you probably saw in that last clip. I mean, I got most of them, but I didn't realise the extent to some of them. Like, I knew, but I was just enjoying the ride. To someone with more foresight than me, they might find these plot twists predictable, but I'm just here for a good time. So yeah, overall, 4 stars, no more, no less, which makes this whole series a 4-star for me, which is great. So no complaints about dedicating. Oh my goodness. So I'm glad that I decided to stick out and finish this series. So I finally got another series I can check off, and that's the wrong order. So if you're interested in getting into a new fantasy series, this one is a good one. It's not too complex, very fast paced, lots of twists and turns, great characters, great storyline. Definitely worth your time. And I believe the Broken Binding have just come out with special editions of these, so definitely worth checking out. So I think I'm going to try reading a duology next. As you saw earlier, I have quite a few duologies that I started and haven't finished, so maybe I'll get to some of those. And hopefully with the coming videos I'll be less awkward. I'm trying to get more comfortable with all of this. I think it will just take time and practice. Thank you for watching if you made it this far, and hopefully I will see you again.